Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today we have one of your favorite episodes, a product deep dive. This is going to be a product deep dive on the brand new CS40 backpack. We gave you a little bit of a teaser episode a while back, but this one is going to be where we just take it out behind the curtain. We really open up unrestricted, not being careful with what we're saying, how we're saying it. We're just going to tell you how it is. It's going to be a fun one. So these are some of your favorite ones. They're usually a little bit longer. So I'm going to pop a top here and enjoy a drink, a nice cool drink while we just hang out and talk about the details of what's gone into this multi-year project that's turned into the CS40 Ultra backpack. If you're new to this podcast, this is the Live Ultralight podcast, and really the purpose of this podcast is to get you out on trail more comfortably, more confidently, and hopefully, and thereby more consistently. We're really passionate about combating this world of technology, which we all use and we all love, but by trying to empower you to get outdoors and go on some epic adventures and get disconnected from tech and get connected with yourself and with loved ones. So if you're interested in that, make sure you do subscribe. Also, along with this podcast will drop as we're opening up a pre-sale on the CS40. If you head over to Outdoor Vitals' website, you'll be able to have access to that pre-sale. You'll be able to get the product at a deeply discounted price. This is going to be a bit of a first-come, first-served scenario where we plan to raise the pricing as things goes along. Now, I don't think this has been fully locked in, but we'll either have the most deep discount for open for a week, or it might just be for the first 100 packs, and then we'll raise the price, and then the next 100 packs and kind of raise that price a little bit. So you'll have to go check that out. So don't sleep on this. Go check it out. You'll also be able to just see the details and the specs and photos of the product there. So check that out while you're listening to this episode. Okay. I think I've covered all the housekeeping items, Brigham. So let's start having a conversation about the CS40. I know we were just out on trail. Technically, we got back yesterday. We were all, getting some photos and things of the CS40, but logging more miles again with it, and just enjoying that pack. And I think what most people are going to experience with this pack is just a level of comfort in a framed pack that is just different and better than I've ever experienced. In an ultralight category like this, that carbon fiber frame it does some magical things. But it was a really good trip. We'll get into the details on all of that. But I guess, Brigham, where do you want to start? I feel like we kind of covered that origin story a little bit last time of the idea behind this second pack, why we're creating this second pack. But so maybe just give a very high level overview of that. If you want to hear the details of that kind of backstory of some of that, you can go listen to that product teaser podcast. That'll be a couple episodes back. But at a high level, what's the purpose of this pack and what is it going to be to people?
Yeah, well, I'd say, to make it quick, it's a pack that we want to kind of meet the needs of another group of ultralight backpackers that prefers a more minimal, lightweight setup. They've got their gear system dialed, and it's kind of exactly what they need, nothing they don't need or want, and but it's got to focus on high comfort levels, stability, support while carrying a load, and durability, as well as a very lightweight.
I think we design a lot of our packs with like specific avatars and use cases in mind. Our first major pack was the Shadowlight backpack. I think it was designed with thru-hikers in mind, for sure. That was a big focus, but we also designed that with trying to keep, really useful features, along with a framed pack, because to us, a pack is really designed to carry what you need. And sometimes what you need can vary up in weight, even if you're an ultralight backpacker, between food and water carries and winter backpacking and all sorts of things. So we, besides just the weight carry distribution and whatnot, but we were designing that with the idea of, thru-hikers and just giving as much, as many options and some extra organization and whatnot of what we could in a 2-pound backpack. With this one, I would say we switched the mentality a little bit, and we also brought in some newer technology when it comes to fabrics that we weren't in love with some of the options at the time of designing that pack. So when we designed the Shadow Light, we looked at DCF. We considered DCF. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, that's Dyneema composite fabric. And we. I don't know. I didn't love it. I specifically remember thinking, I don't like this stuff. I don't feel like it's durable enough. It's light, and in a laboratory it tests really well, but I didn't have confidence in it. And
I think that's probably the best way to sum it up is we definitely could have done it, and it would have provided, one or two unique properties. But as an all-encompassing fabric, there was, I'd say, a little bit of discomfort, or we just weren't totally confident in having that be our one backpack at that point.
Yeah, but there's been new developments in fabrics which we've been able to roll into this piece, and so besides being just more streamlined, I would say in many ways we increased durability, and we, I don't know if this is arguable or not arguable. Maybe you can add to this. It's arguably even more comfortable than the Shadow Light. I don't know if you say that or not. Not to compare to our own products so much, but to give it
could be. I mean, depending on the user and the use case, it certainly could be perceived as more felt comfort for whoever's using it. If anything, it's just comfortable in a different way, in that it's a little more. What's the word?
I've been using
allowing of a little bit more movement and agility or range of motion.
Yeah. So, that all being said, I feel like this pack really shines for people that are really focused on just doing bigger efforts, big days, through hikes. Because it is that more streamlined approach to a pack. A little bit less pocketing and organization, but man, this thing can just meld onto your body and you can feel very, very at one with the pack. And when you're doing big mile days, that's really, really important. We are also able to shave off 5 ounces out of the pack and increase overall durability with the fabrics we were able to use. So I think that's a pretty good high-level overview here. I mean, we're obviously really excited about this pack. I'm more and more excited with this pack the more I use it, and it's been fun to kind of pull together some of the promotional aspects of this, and I'm all hyped up about it. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, one more thing I would add to the comfort is, realistically, I hope maybe it is that my hope is that it would be perceived as more comfortable, because that would mean that there's some progression going on there. I wouldn't want to, let's say we had a pack 10 years ago. I would certainly hope that our pack now is more comfortable than then, and so the idea is that we're just trying to reach more backpackers with this pack. We recognize that one pack isn't going to make everybody happy, and we're certainly going to apply everything we can to make the best pack at any given time that we can. And so, if it is more comfortable, that'd be great.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point to highlight about just our values. Our values really are that a pack is not. It's not a knapsack or whatever you call on your back. It's not just a tube that's just collectively holding things together so it's even possible to carry. It really is that we want the pack to not be a pain point, not be a problem point, feel one with your body, so that your focus is on the miles ahead, so that your focus is on being present in not being uncomfortable, not having a pack issue, not having discomfort or a hot spot or poor load management where it's altering the way that you walk, right? I mean, you get some of these packs that the weight, like you can keep stuffing things into pockets until it shoots 2 feet off of your back, and now you've got this weight pulling you backwards all the time. And so for us, we really value, like at extreme level, the comfort of the pack and its ability to carry the load comfortably in all situations, right? Not just when you have a minimal 8-pound base weight kit, but when you're also going out winter backpacking, when you're here in Utah and you are carrying 6 liters of water, or when we head out on the Uinta Highline Trail and most of us, excluding Brigham, were carrying 6 days worth of food. There's these scenarios that are real world, real life scenarios that really, really matter. And the pack should empower you. It should allow you to look at any trail and feel confident to do it, not say, this is a long carry. I don't want to do it because it doesn't work for my pack, but rather the pack say I can handle whatever you throw at me, even if it is a 7-day trip out of one pack, and staying comfortable there. So load management, load carry is I don't know, do I dare say priority number one? I mean,
it's absolutely one of, if not the top priority. You mentioned before there was a bit of kind of focus on like the target person or user of this pack, and it's somebody that's probably doing lots of miles over repeated days, whether that's just a 1 week, 100+ mile hike or a full thru hike. I guess the attention was given to knowing that what may be tolerable in terms of like slight discomfort or how it maybe affects your body movement, what may be tolerable or acceptable at like 8 to 10 miles could really drastically decrease the quality of your experience after, say, 20 miles in a given day. And so that's where we wanted to focus on. Yes, we're making a very minimal pack, but we are going to focus on everything we can to make the pack not inhibit or restrict people's potential on the trail or out there in the backcountry. We want people, like you said, to just be able to tackle any trip and not have the pack be a reason why they can't do XYZ. So
yeah, there's a purpose and a reason for a pack that's like super niche focused, right? Like a running pack. It's very specific to that. This is a backpacking pack, but what we kept in this pack is the ability to do all terrain, all types of backpacking. I literally used this pack in January to snow ski into an area, and I was carrying a full winter tent, hot tent setup. So I had a large 6-person, I believe, TP tent with a titanium stove, all of my layers, my sleeping bag, everything in this pack. I was still able to do it, as well as take this pack on the Uinta Highline and everywhere in between, down into the desert. It's just an empowering pack that I think people are going to really be able to appreciate for that. And I guess just along with that, like there definitely are packs out there where everyone's trying to make their packs comfortable, I feel like. But there's certain packs you can find out there, and ours is definitely one of them, where I feel like down to the shoulder harness, we're just doing iteration after iteration, trying to micro-tune comfort and adjustability. And we might have mentioned this in the first podcast, but I bet we had 10 prototypes on just the harness structure, the shoulder strap cuts. And we were changing them, sometimes millimeters at a time to optimize those cuts better and better. And so sometimes when you're looking at maybe really niche ultralight cottage brands or other things, I don't know that I have confidence that they're doing the same level of work and focus. And they're also really building a pack that's maybe only able to carry 20 pounds max load capacity, and that's just not going to cut it for what we feel like if you're making a substantial investment in gear, that gear needs to be able to work in a lot of environments typically. So, okay. So high level overview, this pack's super comfortable. It's more durable. Which of those two do you want to start on? Because we'll talk about the actual design and pack itself.
We can go into some durability real quick.
Okay.
It's an easy one to tackle. I mean, one of the things we wanted to accomplish was to make a lighter backpack than the current option that we have, because that is an advantage to kind of the person that this should appeal to. Somebody doing maybe higher mileage days, and so saving 5 ounces in a backpack is kind of a priority. That's the weight of your cook kit. It's substantial, and so if we're going to make a pack that we want to save some, reduce the weight on the pack itself, but not sacrifice like durability or comfort, then we had to put quite a bit of focus into like the materials that we're going to use and how we're going to use them to maintain, kind of our standards in terms of durability. There's not like a set like numerical value. It just means we didn't want to sacrifice durability or comfort. So we had to look at what we'd used in the past, look at other options we'd considered in the past, and look at things that we hadn't used or tested previously, and look at what's out there. And it was a very unrestricted process of really anything's on the table. And so we ended up going and getting some fabrics that we hadn't used before. We got some Ultra fabric from Challenge, and started making prototypes with that to test that out. And the reason why we kind of ended up with the Ultra 200 fabric is because it is in a weight class. It's a 200 denier woven fabric, but it's in the weight class of most 100D fabrics like Robic nylon or other 100D options out there. So it weighs the same, but it has like substantially more durability, especially when you're talking like tear resistance, cutting resistance, tensile strength, and especially abrasion resistance.
Which is a big one. That last one especially.
It's
over what was available before.
Especially it's a big one, again, for the high mileage user at the end of a long day or in the middle of a high exertion effort in the middle of your day's miles. Like, you don't really want to be having to gingerly put down something or worry about like, oh shoot, I set down my backpack on some sandstone or just stuff like that. Because I think everybody interested in this pack will be able to relate. You're tired and you want to just sit down for a minute and lift your feet up and eat or have a drink. So those, that's where the abrasion resistance is huge. And I mentioned some of the 100D like typical nylon fabrics, but we also mentioned earlier our reservations or slight lack of confidence in the common Dyneema fabrics out there. Those ones, that's where our reservations lie, is in the abrasion resistance of that fabric. And so to give you some like data, I guess, like the Ultra 200 fabric is 6 times more abrasion resistant than the heavier weight Dyneema fabrics that are on backpacks in the market right now. If there's a backpack in this ultralight category that's using DCF and it's the heavier version, this Ultra 200 fabric is 6 times more abrasion resistant, twice as much tensile strength and overall strength. Tear resistance is much stronger. And so
it's just like a big deal because I think accidents happen, right? Accidents happen. People poke holes in their pack somehow. But personally, the only way that I've worn out packs or is through abrasion. It's picking them up, setting them down. It's sliding in a truck bed. It's putting it up, on a rock. Or I had a friend, and hopefully he's okay with me saying this, but Dan Becker one time was telling me about, he went through some slot canyon country out here in Utah with a DCF pack, and in one trip he just put holes all throughout the whole pack. One trip with sandstone and slot canyons and that kind of terrain. Just that pack was done, right? And so there's some serious reservations. I think that's the more common way people are breaking or wearing out backpacks is through abrasion, not necessarily, I don't know, something jabbed through the backpack or and if the pack's made right, like whatever, like something's not sticking through the pack, like a frame or, whatever it is. That's my thought on it, is that abrasion, that's where most packs even get worn out to begin with. So 6 times more abrasive resistant than that, in the same weight category. I mean, like this is a comparable weight fabric to 100 denier Robic nylon. So I don't know, I guess off the top of my head, what like ounce per yard or whatnot a lot of the DCF options are out there, but
I
don't know if they're, so would this Ultra be slightly heavier or comparable to the heavier version of it?
It'll be comparable to like a DCH or DCF 150.
Okay.
In terms of weight. And then so that's kind of where we tested that out, and that's where we ended up going, was making the whole pack bag out of Ultra 200, because we felt it had the best balance of durability and weight. Again, so we were able to keep a really, really lightweight fabric that has really good durability. And then the other areas or materials we kind of went with, just to do the most that we could to keep the weight of the backpack very low, was looking at frame material. We've used aluminum internal frames before, like with the Shadowlight backpack. That's a tubular internal aluminum frame, and I think it's 3.8 ounces for that internal frame. And so looking at the goals of the backpack and, knowing that we do want an internal frame for really good load support and load transfer, like how do you get lighter weight than, a frame that's really lightweight already? And aluminum just was not going to be a good option. And so, I mean, there's very few materials out there that are going to be, strong enough, but lighter weight than that aluminum frame. So we decided to look into carbon fiber, and so got in contact with some carbon fiber suppliers and kind of nailed one down that seemed like a good fit and a good company to work with. And
had a lot of experience in this realm.
Yeah, a lot of experience doing, carbon fiber specifically for backpacks. And so, had a lot of conversations with them, and it's a good fit.
Well, let me interject here just for a second with it's not only carbon, but there's different ways to make a frame, right? You've got tubular aluminum. You've got aluminum stays. So a stay would be like a more flat but wide piece. Usually, I don't know, like think of like a less wide ruler stick or something like that. And the same applies to even carbon. So you have tubular carbon, and then you've got more of a carbon laid in a stay format. So there was a lot of options, because I mean that was definitely something. There's carbon framed packs out there that have basically carbon arrow shafts or tubular carbon as their frames. And why would we not use one of those? Because those are much more economical. More economical.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Well, I guess the reason why we went with what we did, which is 2 carbon fiber stays, they're flat, meaning it's, if you think of it as a stick, right? It's a flat stick, so it's wider than it is thick, and it's contoured, to follow the curvature of the spine. That in terms of why would we do that versus just tubes, you can't contour tubes. Well, technically you can, but you run into big challenges putting a curved tube in any kind of channel or some sort of structure. That tube is going to turn inside, and I've personally tested this and sewn these things together myself with contoured tubular frames, and it's basically impossible to get that to not turn inside the frame channel. And then now you've got a huge distortion of the back panel profile. It's tweaked in one direction or the other, and it's terrible. But the other big advantage to what we did by using two independent stays, they're not connected at any point, is that we're able to get like the vertical stability and the load transfer to take the weight off our shoulders and transfer the weight to our hips via the hip belt. Having two independent stays allows the backpack to move more than say like the Shadowlight frame or any internal frame that has two pieces that come up vertically and then connect at the top or the bottom or the middle or anywhere. These two independent carbon fiber stays allow the backpack to move with the motions of the body as we're moving like in a linear direction. Our body still rotates and it just moves on different axes, right?
Your hip is moving forward, and then the other side of your hip is moving forward and back as you're taking each step.
And your shoulders are kind of moving, and your torso is moving, and so oftentimes they're in counter directions, right? And so I think that's one of the most noticeable, or one of the more noticeable aspects about this backpack as you're hiking with it, is you can feel increased levels of mobility and freedom of movement.
So I've got some questions for you to dive into here. So, but before I do that, with the carbon fiber stay, one of the coolest benefits is that we could work with our carbon fiber supplier to specifically tune how much twist we wanted in it and how much vertical strength we wanted in that stay. So we've got a proprietary blend really of a carbon fiber stay that both they've matched that to the specifications we've given them, and we've tested that to be able to have twist and play in the stay, but also a insane amount of vertical stability, which essentially means that it can move with your body, but it can also load transfer or take the weight off of your shoulders and vertically transfer that down into your hip or hip belt. And so it really does provide some massive advantages over a tubular carbon fiber or even a tubular aluminum frame, because now you've got contour in the frame and you've got the ability to kind of tune that into how much twist and vertical strength you have.
Yeah. You essentially kind of make a recipe based on the characteristics, properties you want the frame to do. You like you just said, you can have it really flexible in a linear fashion or really stiff in a linear fashion, and you can also adjust how much that flat bar is able to kind of twist or counter twist on itself, right? So that's all done by layering the fibers, the carbon fibers. They're just these long fibers, and you adjust the properties of the final product by how many are vertically or linear laid down in a linear fashion versus like at an angle, because these are all stacked on top of each other, and then compression is used to basically mold it all together into one permanent structure. And so that's how that's dialed in, and it's really fascinating, it's really impressive, and it's really fun to have that capability to kind of get that recipe for what we think is going to be the best experience for the backpacker.
So let's talk about with the frame. I don't know how, like, another word to describe this as, but the way that I want to describe this frame as is when you put it on, your initial feeling is that it feels a little bit more supple, like a little bit more giving right away. But then as you use it and as you maybe use the load lifters, you feel like the strength of the carbon and the frame as well. What I wanted to ask you kind of related to that is when I think about like an aluminum frame, and I've had good experiences with aluminum. Like the Ultralight frame has done me well. There's this difference of this like supple feeling of how this frame feels. Like you just can instantly feel the difference in the frame having that little bit of give. But when you compare aluminum to a carbon fiber frame, it seems to me like you get this more harsh ride type of feeling, this more harsh feeling, because if you were to say put tension on aluminum, if you were to start to bend aluminum, at first it's kind of easy, just a little bit, but then it kind of hits this break point, and then after it goes past the break point, I mean, it just bends, and it essentially just caves away, like it just gives out. Whereas with carbon, it has, I guess just tell me if you agree with this, it has more of an ability to be soft at first, and then just get gradually more firm and firm and firm. And it also has an ability to move or bend way farther before it would ever compromise the frame, crack, break. And so you've got this like start to finish softer feel that gets more hard. And maybe a good way to think about that is if you've ever had a fishing pole. Like as you bend a fishing pole, it's really easy to start to bend it, and you bend it a little farther, and it gets a little harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. But you can bend a fishing pole. I mean, you can a lot of good ones. You typically can wrap the end of it and touch the other end of it and make a circle out of them. And so that's been my experience of kind of explaining how it's more supple. It's like more supple. Like each step, it's going to have just a fraction more give than an aluminum, more harsh ride. But then it just stiffens up when it needs to, and is actually a stronger, more capable frame than the aluminum.
Yeah.
At least especially when you're talking about weight categories. But
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in your experience, I guess jumping from aluminum to carbon, what does that feel like to you?
I think maybe another additional characteristic is I would say it feels a little bit more dampened, and carbon like that is one of the properties of carbon fiber it's more dampening of shock and vibration than aluminum. A great example, if there's any photographers or videographers out there, you use an aluminum tripod, a slight bump or whatever affects the camera way more than on a carbon fiber tripod. They absorb or dampen shock so much better. And so that is going to transfer over to the backpack, the internal frame with our backpack. And so it does have a more dampened feel, but it also, I think the independent configuration of those also, because it restricts some of those movements of the body less, you just feel less of the frame. Like you just feel you feel less of its presence in the suspension system.
Yeah, like if you were to go from the Ultralight to say our fast pack that's coming out later this year, obviously there's massive differences in ability to have range of motion and ability to just feel like the pack is a part of you, right? Like a fast pack is really meant to feel very close to the body, be able to, you'd be able to run with this thing. So you're moving, you're shifting a lot. And I feel like the CS40 bridges that gap tremendously from, say, a traditional aluminum style frame and setup to like a fast pack where you've got this thing kind of landing in the middle where you just feel like you can move, twist, have that supple play in it just a little bit. And I'm not talking about like bending over the fishing rod. Like it's not that kind of movement in this frame at all. It's just even like it moving a centimeter is noticeable. Mm-hmm. And even though you might not think it is, it will be noticeable. And it's just a massive improvement. So we originally went with this carbon got interested and started playing around with this really for some weight savings, right? We cut what did you say, 3.2 or 3.5 ounces for the previous one?
Yeah, so the Shadowlight frame's 3.8 ounces, and the two stays combined are 2 ounces even. So it's about a 40% weight reduction in the frame.
So we reduced the weight of the frame by 40%, but what we also got with it is just this tremendous feel and comfort on the trail.
Yeah,
that was,
I think, a great, like the hike we did yesterday or the day before is a really good one because there's a lot of climbing up, rocks that you can't really walk up.
Scrambling.
So they're 24-inch tall rocks where you're maybe having to reach up and use a hand on a ledge or something, and really kind of go to max mobility that you're going to do with a backpack. Really some steep climbs, for like a couple miles. It was a couple miles of that, and I feel like that's a really good use case or a good example of kind of the advantages that the CS40 has in a backpacking trip like that.
So let's talk about the layout of the pack for a minute. I guess I'll start with capacity. So the main compartment of the pack is 40 liters of capacity, right?
Yeah, that's main compartment internal volume.
Just main compartment internal. So that's not including 2 oversized side pockets. So these side pockets are volumized. So that's like your water bottle pockets. Those are very large and volumized with a drain hole in them. So you can easily fit 2 1-liter smart water bottles in one side. You can fit the largest smart water bottle in there and extras. So very generously sized. Then on the back panel, we have 1 large and volumized mesh pocket. Yep. So that's both volumized in the way that we've sewn it, but we've also put a little bit of a really cool looking DCF side layer on there to help of the Ultra. Sorry, to volumize that as well. So you've got this big back mesh pocket. You've got a roll top closure on this, so the 40 liters is with the pack rolled 3 times?
4 times.
4 times. So if you weren't rolling your pack 4 times, let's say you rolled it twice, you'd get a little bit more capacity there. And then you have 2 hip belt pockets as well. And so when you add all of these together, you're actually at about a 50-liter capacity pack. We call it a 40 here at Outdoor Vitals because that's typically how we've done things, is to really focus on the internal capacity of the pack. Yep. However, when you are shopping around, be very aware that most of the other providers out there are combining some pockets or all of the pockets. And I've definitely seen this where, like in the mesh pockets, I don't know how it's possible to claim like the volume. Like they are maxing the mesh pocket out and claiming like 10 or 15 liters out of this mesh pocket, where you're like, that's insanity. But okay.
We definitely go conservative on the volumes. We're very exact on main compartment, water bottle pockets, hip belt pockets, and we're quite conservative on like the stretch pocket. It's volumized empty, so as an empty pocket, there's a lot of just room. You don't have to stretch it to create volume, but it is a very good size stretch pocket, and we can fit a lot in there.
Yeah, like I say, we've used it for like the Highline. That's a 5-6 days worth of supplies. Your water. We had gear to brave basically snow because we got snowed off the trail the year previous. So we're not just packing like the minimalist summer gear kit. We're taking 15-degree setups with well-insulated pads, with layers, et cetera. There's some filming equipment, battery bank, those types of things. And we're able to fit that in this pack. This pack would be, like I say, very comparable to, I think when I was matching them up, like the Z-Packs Arcall 55. When you get into the details of that pack and this pack, they're going to be very, very similar in capacities. Anything else specific to the pockets you want to highlight?
To the pockets, no. It's a very simple minimalist pack. So there's not a lot of pockets, and we pretty much just covered all of them. We do have
the hip belts are one hand operational. They're quite functional in that way.
One thing we can talk about, because Tyler gave me, I don't have a big phone. I mean, we've had other people put their big phones in there, but like a current generation iPhone Pro Max fits in there. And
it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, and it's not like we're trying to chase the largest phones out there to claim that our pockets fit in there. It's just a bit of reference. Like if you're familiar with a phone of that size, it fits in there. And just to give you an idea of the hip belt pockets, so they're volumized, outward. They're not like a stretch hip belt pocket. I typically will put like my water filter and headlamp in one pocket. And then my phone, keys, and some like electrolyte mixes and a couple snacks in the right side pocket, sometimes a beanie. So I think they're really good size. Like I said, we're not really trying to chase the world's largest hip belt pocket for phones or anything, but they're very useful.
Yeah, and one option to, maybe I'll sneak this in right here, is we developed an accessory that'll launch at the same time as the CS40, which is a shoulder, an attachable or extra accessory that you can.
It's a shoulder strap pocket.
A shoulder strap pocket. I wanted to say a water bottle pocket, but it's also a pocket. And
you can slide it onto your shoulder strap, and
so you can slide this water bottle / phone holder pocket or whatever you want to use it for onto your shoulder strap. It attaches on there well. I was just using it on this last trip. Really liked it. I experimented with both using, a half-liter size water bottle in there. You could get a larger one if you wanted to.
Like a flask.
I had a flask, a 500 ml flask, and that fit with ample room. And then I also experimented with just using it to hold my phone.
Yeah.
That worked really well. It's a very stable pocket. And during this pre-sale, you should be able to get one of those included with your pack. So we'll do a bit of a bundle where you'll get a discount and a free accessory with your pack. So again, if you jump on the pre-sale, you can have that added in.
And it's a stretch woven nylon, so it's not it's not a non-stretch just
light
backpack fabric. It's a stretch woven, very stretchy fabric. So it is really good, like for any like hydration, food, snacks, water filters, InReach minis, InReach full size, all kinds of those things. It's a great little accessory.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've been using like our fast pack so much too that I get used to having those pockets there, and they're handy. They really are handy. So that's something that you can explore adding on to this pack very easily, and they're light. I don't know if you know a weight on them, but they're not. I've tested out ones in the past that I'm like, this thing is robust. Like, why do you need 500 denier fabric for a pocket? And things like that. No, it's very light, very minimal. And you can just because I think we'll get questions on this. You can put this piece onto your pack just by unthreading your shoulder strap, and you don't have to cut the end. It's a little tight, but you can get it on there without cutting the end of the strap there. So, so those are pocket options. Plenty of options to use. On the side of the pack, you also have an adjustment. It's not just a single cord going across the side. It's going to be a cord that's going to go through one loop and then back to the same side. So essentially, you've got two crossings of the cord, which I really, really like, especially if you're putting anything long on the side of your pack, such as a tripod, which I do occasionally. If you're ever going to carry a fishing rod, if you're ever going to carry tent poles, or I slid my trekking poles down the side, when I was getting to and from the trailhead. And in that, having two straps coming across there, very helpful, gives you two different heights, depending on what you're putting or lashing onto the side. So very helpful, and just really good at compressing and holding that in. Although the pack is very specifically cut to hold the weight well, which I want to get into in just a second. The other thing that we did add to this pack, it does have the ability, or it does have like the ice axe loop, ability to put your.
It's got like the lower ice axe loop with an upper shock cord, like trekking pole retention loop. Works both for ice axes or trekking poles or longer items like that.
And then we also added 4 little tabs to the bottom of the pack so that if you choose or so inclined to attach something to the bottom of the pack, you can run some shock cord. In fact, the marketing team wanted me to use this to get some photos of it. So I put my Helinox chair there with some shock cord, and it's very easy to attach something down there. It sits in a very secure spot. What I liked about it, and this is where we need to probably get into the curvature of this pack a little bit, is that even attaching it there, if you have to do this isn't like something we strongly recommend, right? But we put it there as an option for those that strongly wanted the ability to attach something to the bottom of the pack.
Yeah, they're lashing loops.
Yeah. The way that it sits is not like it's hanging clean off the bottom of the pack because there's curve to this pack. So if you were to look at the side profile of this pack, essentially the very bottom corner where your hip belt and the bottom of the pack are connecting, essentially, the back of it does not just go out flat like a square. It's going to start there and start to curve up and around. And the purpose of that is to hold the weight up and against your back, not to let it sag down and away from your back. And you can do that per se, even in a square bottom. If you had like a perfect compression strap, you can kind of get a similar effect. But in the grand scheme of things, you don't want weight in this kind of quadrant that's far away, like straight out over your butt and far away from your back. So the pack, similar to the Shadowlight but more exaggerated, will curve up and around, giving you an incredibly stable feel, even if you never once tightened a compression strap on the side of this thing. And especially in the bottom, there's no compression strap down there because it's just not needed.
Yeah, that it's really like intended to be a compression curve. It forces the volume or whatever the contents are. It forces the weight because it doesn't allow it to go any lower. So that curve forces the load up and in more closer to the lumbar as opposed to the bottom of the pack. So it forces the load higher and closer to the body, and then that's by design for the stability of the load and the comfort and how the weight is carried on your body. And so that's kind of like the compression actually built into the side profile of the backpack. And then after it curves upward, it does start to actually curve about mid torso or mid back is the widest or deepest side profile of the pack bag. So it curves up and out and then continues curving outward and hits that maximum depth around mid-spine, and then it tapers closer to the body as it gets to the top of the pack bag. And that, again, is so it forces or doesn't allow an excess buildup of tons of items towards the top of the pack bag, because now you're creating stability and balance issues where that load can potentially kind of mess with your center of gravity and your stability. So we want to keep things a little higher and tighter to the body, way low on the pack, and have anywhere you want to carry the most weight and the most volume, really, like right around the middle third of your torso. And so that's how the side profile of the bag is shaped. And then we do have the compression cords on the side, and they're way more usable for containing things on the sides because the depth of the backpack is deliberately designed to not be so deep that you can stuff so much gear that it extends far away from your back, because that creates discomfort. It creates fatigue on your back and your shoulders, and so that's all deliberately designed into the shape of the pack bag.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're here because you kind of enjoy these details, but these details matter for comfort on the trail. If you were to just pattern out a backpack with very square sides and things like that, you would not get and feel the stability of the CS40. And Brigham was 100% right when he was talking about like the side compression straps. I pretty much have never needed to use them for actual compression because it's almost like when you fill this pack up, it's like you're filling up a funnel, like a funnel that's clogged at the bottom, right? So the more stuff you put in there, the more it shifts down into the pack. But at the same time, the funnel itself is holding the pack or holding everything that's put into it in the optimal place to be comfortable. So let's say you only fill this pack halfway up. Well, the weight, like if you only filled it half of the capacity up, where the stuff would fall inside of the pack is pretty optimally held in place. Whereas in other packs, it's pretty critical to like pack the bag horizontally, then use the side compression straps to lock everything into place before you stand that bag upright. And this isn't a knock even against like our Coda UL. For those of you that are interested with the Coda UL, if you were to just like fill that bag halfway or like have it completely uncompressed from those internal compression clips and then fill it halfway up, every piece of your gear would just be sitting in the bottom of the pack. The way that we've cut the CS40 and designed the CS40 is it's going to strategically hold more of that weight higher in the backpack and hold it very secure and stably. And these are the kind of details that it's like you don't really have to worry about compressing and getting your load right nearly as much in the CS40. Yes, like we're still going to strongly encourage you to pack the bag weight-wise in a certain way. Like, put your sleeping bag in the very bottom. It melds into that bottom, section of the pack very, very well. But it just takes a lot of the thought out of that, a lot of the necessity for compressing and getting your load, packing it right, getting your compression straps on the side just right, because the pack inherently is going to create massive stability in just the way that we've cut it to begin with. Yep. Those are the details that do matter, and those are the details that you guys are getting to take away from listening to this long-winded, fun podcast for us. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about pockets. Talked about capacity. We've talked about the cut of the pack. Let's talk for a second about the back panel of the backpack, and then from there we'll get into maybe some of the harness itself, but. Something that is unique that you pointed out in a product training you did here at the office was that like you don't look and see the Ultra fabric on the back, right? It's that we've added in different layers of things. So what's going on the back panel? It's extra labor, it's extra cost, but there's a purpose behind it. What did we do there?
We just wanted to put some attention towards comfort. So we didn't want to just sew up a really simple back panel that put a waterproof waterproof fabric right against your body and call it good. Because
Ultra is waterproof.
Ultra is a waterproof
extremely
fabric,
waterproof,
and like you pretty much are always going to sweat with a backpack on. Just any fabric contacting, pressing up against your body is going to be warmer than not having contact against the body. So, but like. The idea of having a waterproof fabric directly against my clothing is just not appealing, and so we designed an intentional back panel that has a good density and thickness of foam in areas where it's going to contact the body, and then left the foam out where there's natural curvatures along the spine, like a concavity vertically. Most human being spines, there's a concave nature to the back, and so we left that area without foam, to allow for airflow and weight reduction. And so we basically just made the foam panel to have really good contact in the lumbar area, and then up the sides of the back, where it's going to run up your towards your scapula. That's where the foam is, and we wanted to have again comfort and weight reduction. So the back panel is really a multi-effort kind of objective or a multi-objective effort where we are trying to save weight and be comfortable. So everything you see when you look at that is targeting those two objectives: comfort and what did I say? Comfort and what? Weight reduction.
Weird.
So So we have a bunch of holes cut out of the foam, because that makes the foam weigh less, but it also allows for some airflow to kind of enter and circulate in the back panel. So
even just gives the opportunity for your body heat to just move away from you, right, through its own mechanisms and whatnot. So to recap that, essentially we've got a fabric laying over the top of the DC or the Ultra fabric, so that you don't have this waterproof fabric almost sticking to you, for lack of a better word. And then we've optimally cut the padding within the back panel to allow air movement, to reduce weight, and allow just heat to
move away from
you. And then what about the shoulder straps and hip belt, as far as, are they minimally padded? Are they, give us some context of what we've done there.
Yeah, so the shoulder straps, we kind of took the same approach as we did with the back panel. We wanted to keep them as light as weight possible, but very comfortable. And the comfort comes from the thickness and the density of the foam, combined with a lot of cutout areas in the foam of the shoulder strap. That reduces a lot of weight, and it adds another element of pliability or softness to the foam that's not associated with the density of the foam. Having a row, essentially a big column of cutout holes in the foam, allows the foam to bend and twist along the contours of your body in a really effective way. And the other benefit of that is by having these big holes cut out of the foam, and you've got spacer mesh on the inside or against the body. That's a very porous, breathable body of fabric. And then you've got these big holes in the foam, and then on the outside layer, the fabric is this ripstop mesh, so you can see through it. So it really kind of allows maximum heat dissipation away from your body, some airflow, and great weight reduction.
But these aren't paper thin padded straps.
That's the next point, is that we specifically dialed in, again, the thickness of the foam, the density of the foam, and then those cutouts. And those three things really achieve kind of what we're trying to accomplish in making them really lightweight. There's no point in just having heavy shoulder straps. It's counterproductive to have shoulder straps that are overbuilt or heavy. That's just weight literally on your shoulders. And so they're really lightweight. They breathe. We maximize the potential for breathability on the shoulder straps, and they're very comfortable. The pliability of that is really good. And it's not just this thin, firm foam that sits on top. It's a really good combination.
You brought up the fabric on the outside of those shoulder straps. There are a couple fabrics besides just Ultra in this pack.
Yep.
So that outside, it's a what'd you call it? A woven.
It's a ripstop mesh.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece. And what's cool about it is if you go to the website and you look at photos, you're able to see that it's somewhat see-through, which again allows for breathability, but it also gives the pack a really cool look because you can see the colored foam on the underside of the fabric there. We're also using a secondary fabric, was what we're coating the back of the back panel with, so that you don't have Ultra up against your skin. What is that fabric, and why are we using that?
Yeah, so that's just a secondary fabric outside of the Ultra fabric that is the main pack bag. It's just 100D Robic nylon. Really lightweight fabric that really carries no burden, has no workload, and
bit of a redundant layer on top of it.
It's an extra layer, which actually is, it's with a back panel especially, where you're sewing in load-bearing shoulder straps and load lifters and things like that. Having extra layers sewn together is really good, and so that's kind of like a twofold reasoning for that. And so, because there's a lot of stitching that you'll see there's a lot of stitching that goes into a back panel, especially a kind of what you maybe call an engineered back pad. There's a lot of stitching, and so having extra layers of fabric there makes it really strong. And so, yeah.
So we also touched on the fact that Ultra is highly waterproof. Question that's going to come up is this backpack seam taped or not? The answer to that is no. Yep. Why did we choose not to seam tape this?
Really because I think the most effective way to keep gear dry is to use dry bags. And then there's, we have a drain hole in the bottom, and it's just not the best solution for everybody. So no, the pack is not waterproof. It's not seam taped. The fabric is highly waterproof. And we use, really good seam construction. Now, if somebody wanted to waterproof it, they could, and they could, email support with questions on how to do that. I've already talked to our support team.
Well, you mentioned actually seam sealing this from the outside.
Yeah, I'm just saying because that's the easiest, most effective, and easiest way to do it.
That's the key. Is it is the most effective. It won't maybe look the best because you kind of have this glued-looking substance going down your seams. But when you seam tape the inside of the pack, you're having to tape over this layer of fabric that's kind of the seam essentially that's hanging on the inside of the pack.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I think to point out there is the pack is going to be very water resistant, I'll say, extremely water resistant. But when you make something waterproof and you claim that it's waterproof and you seam tape it and claim that it's waterproof, people have become very reliant on it being waterproof. And there's factors of time, the amount of abuse backpacks take, the amount of abuse seams take, the amount of if you're sealing up the pack or not. And so becoming overly confident that your backpack is 100% waterproof is just not something I would ever recommend. You can find plenty of stories out there of how that didn't work out for people on trail. And so, yeah, for us, this is a highly water-resistant backpack, but we would still encourage you to take your own precautions, such as with all of our top quilts and sleeping bags. Well, I guess not all of the sleeping bags, but our newest sleeping bags, the Summits, they're going to be coming with a dry bag. Like that is the compression bag. That is this, your way to take this onto trail is to use a dry bag compression system. We've loved that for years. That method of using dry bags for organization, making sure everything is dry. They're moldable, meaning you can push the air out of them and then kind of shape them a little bit, and they just have worked very, very effectively for us. So that's our philosophy. That's our style on seam taping the bags and how we feel like you should, go about, or how we feel our opinions on how you should keep your gear dry. So, okay. Man, we've gone through a lot of the pack. What have I missed so far?
So we haven't gone over the hip belt. We talked about the hip belt pockets, but the hip belt, we took a very similar approach with the hip belt. So against the body is going to be spacer mesh, and it's a little bit more dense and softer spacer mesh than the shoulder straps. That's because that's where the weight is going to be carried, right? So that's where we want the most comfort. So we dialed in, we tested different thicknesses and densities of foams again, and it's a very generously padded hip belt, and we did the same targeted cutouts. So there's big cutout, long skinny ovals in the hip belt to, again, reduce weight, allow some heat to move away from the body, and then it really helps the hip belt pliability, because that hip belt, that's, again, what's carrying all the weight, but it's also probably has the most pressure in terms of contact with your body. And so we want that to easily conform to the contours of your hips or your waist area. And so by designing those cutouts into the foam of the hip belt, it really helps it conform and take shape while maintaining all the cushion that the thickness of the foam provides. So And it's not just like some straight cut, half oval shaped pad. It's anatomically shaped to have more width or breadth to it in the areas that are going to hold the most load on your body. And then we do use a 2-point webbing system, meaning where the webbing is sewn to the hip belt to buckle it to itself. It's sewn to the hip belt in 2 locations that are about 2 or 3 inches apart. And what that does is as you tension the hip belt, they're forward pull tensioning on the hip belt webbing and a single center buckle. But by having 2 contact points or 2 attachment points on each hip pad, it spreads the pressure out when you tighten the hip belt. So you're going to buckle a single buckle right around your navel, and then there's pieces of webbing you're going to grab and pull forward for leverage. And it's really smooth. It's really easy. And so I feel like it's a very effective and comfortable system.
Yeah, it really helps just distribute that weight as it comes across your belly, so that you don't have one single strap coming across your belly. You've got kind of 2 that are taking the brunt of that, and it's a really good transition from a wider hip belt into the straps. We didn't really touch on this as specifically, but the hip belt itself is technically it's removable. You could swap this out for a smaller hip belt, but there is more Velcro in it this time, meaning like it's very securely attached to the pack, which is nice. It's not going to migrate or move on you. But also, we took away the removable back panel feature that was on that is on the Shadowlight for this pack, and it'd probably be worth just kind of touching on that for just a half a second in why, right? So I'll let you handle that or like answer that, but I mean both are good options. Just this one's a little bit more laser focused, I would say, but
yeah, I mean definitely part of the equation was weight savings. It uses a lot less foam in the back panel than even our own backpack and maybe some other options out there, but because it's the back panel, if you were to look at it, it kind of just looks like a U with kind of like a really thick bottom curve of the U. That's the general shape of it. So again, you've got a lot of lumbar contact with the foam at the bottom, and then the foam goes up the sides of your back. And that is permanently fixed into the back panel. It's covered or sewn to the back panel with stretch mesh over top of that, so you can look through the mesh and see the foam, as opposed to it being a solid rectangle, basically, of foam sewn between 2 layers of pack bag fabric. Where there's other bags on the market where they have maybe a 1/4 inch thick foam pad just kind of sewn into the inner side of the back of the pack bag. This foam is semi-exposed. You can see the foam panel behind the stretch mesh, and so I'd say it's focused on being very stable, not shifting around, and being as lightweight as possible while maintaining really good comfort, some good breathability, and I
think one of the edges or advantages a little bit to this is just like you say, because there's less moving parts, there's really no need to worry about like shifting or adjusting anything. So that like in a system where you have a removable back panel or back foam pad, you've got pieces that are holding that in place, and that those can shift a little bit over time, or if you're taking it in and out, you got to kind of get it right back in the perfect spot again. And I feel like it's just very streamlined, and like you said, it has weight reduction abilities as well. So
I think maybe another way you could put what you were describing is there's less potential for error with having it kind of permanently affixed inside there.
Yep. Okay. So we've covered top to bottom harness system, covered fabrics, covered the frame now. We did not cover the top strap, so really quick, there is a large top strap that goes up and over. It's a single top strap. It does fit a BV 450.
450, yeah.
So a bear canister can fit on the top of that. It's not necessarily the recommended place to put the bear canister.
I mean, if you're packing your backpack so full that you have to put your food, on top of your backpack, maybe reconsider your packing choices, because you're packing the food anyway, right? So,
right.
We can easily fit 6 days of food inside the backpack, and so the best place for the BV 450 is inside the backpack. And like we've tested this out, packed a full backpacking trip load out, and then stuck the BV 450 on top of that, and it's easily contained within the roll top. That would be the definite recommended way to pack your bear canister.
More secure, absolutely.
And it'll be way more comfortable and stable, without having that 5 pounds of food weight hanging up
on the
vertically.
Highest,
but the strap will contain the bear canister.
I think we've covered most of everything now.
So we can go through sizing. And volume choices.
Sure.
So there's going to be small, medium, large hip belts and small, medium, large
or tall.
Yeah, and we actually changed to just small, medium, large just to avoid confusion between like hip belt and torso sizing. So you can order any configuration of torso size and hip belt size. One thing I do want to point out is if the size small torso, we could just say the size small bag portion, that takes into account the torso size of the user, but the size small specifically is a shorter backpack. So the frame and the total pack height is 2 inches less than the medium and the tall. So for shorter people, the actual total height of the pack, including the internal frame, is about 21 and a half inches versus like 23 and a half inch frame with the medium and the tall. So, but again, you can be a small hip belt with a medium torso or a large torso, and you can be a large hip belt with a small torso. So you can order those configurations. The small bag is 2 liters less capacity, so it's not much. The internal volume on the small was 38 liters. So
one thing to note there, a couple things to note there actually, but by cutting that frame down, what that allows the user of a small pack, a small torso framed person, is it's still going to allow them to have full range of motion of their head. And this pack does that exceptionally well. You will be able to look straight above you. We got some shots yesterday of Brigham, or 2 days ago, of Brigham literally looking straight up a slot canyon. So that's been a big, not improvement, but just a major factor in design, is making sure we're, keeping the ability to look around, not be encumbered by a frame. Because that's another reason that maybe someone would ever consider dropping a frame, is if they've had bad experiences with, head mobility in a frame. These are not that way. But we also cannot, any chance that we have the opportunity, we need to talk about why our frames are 23 and a half inches or 24 inches tall versus these standard, frame sizes out there, such as some of the other ones out there that are like 18 inches tall, or let's say one of the more main most popular bag companies out there, ultralight bag companies out there, in a medium-sized bag. They've got a 20-inch tall frame, and that's like the best I could even find, was a 20-inch tall frame and a medium torso. Keep in mind, I'm 6'2", and I am a medium-sized torso. So don't just order a tall because you're tall. We had a guy that worked for us that was 6'4", And that dude barely fit a medium torso. He was almost a size small torso. He was just all legs. So it doesn't matter how tall you are. What matters is your torso size. So follow the sizing recommendations on the site. If you don't know, you can do measurements. But please be aware of that, because one of the number one things that we see is tall people ordering a tall bag because they're tall and then returning it. And I can promise you'll be more comfortable like wearing a bag that is fitted appropriately for you, or even smaller than you than if you buy a bag that's too big. You just can't get rid of the gaps and stuff that are created behind your shoulders if you buy a tall and you're really a medium torso. So please be aware of that. Please order the proper bag. But Brigham, why do we have tall frames, and why are we so adamant that they matter?
Again, it all comes down to comfort. I know we're talking about ultralight loads, but we want every advantage that we can get. So if our pack only weighs 10 pounds, I want like as much of those 10 pounds carried on my hips as possible. So, but it's even more important if it's 25 pounds or 30 pounds. But the point is mile after mile, day after day, if we're carrying weight on our shoulders, that fatigues our body. That requires a bunch more energy, and it wears our bodies down faster. It's less comfortable. And so there's so much emphasis on comfort. And we've talked about it before, but the reason or how comfort is achieved via an internal frame and how tall the frame is. A backpack carries weight. It's just a bag that carries weight, and your body holds it. So the backpack carries weight, and we put it on our body. If we just put weight in a backpack and then put shoulder straps on our shoulders are holding all that weight. We want a way to lift some of that weight off our shoulders and transfer the weight somehow down to our hips, which are much better suited to carrying weight for a sustained period of time, as opposed to putting that stress on our vertebrae. So it's pretty difficult for a bag full of gear that weighs something. You can't really transfer weight up off your shoulders if there's nothing above the shoulders to pull the weight off the shoulders. And so if we have an internal frame that is, say, 24 inches or 23 and a half, or just call it 24, the top of the frame is going to extend higher than the top of the shoulders. And if you put a load lifter webbing strap there with a tensioner, when you pull on the webbing, because of leverage, when you pull on that, the webbing is going to lift the weight of the bag up, away, and off of your shoulders. And because you have a rigid structure supporting that up against your back that follows the contours of your spine, now that weight will be transferred down to the bottom of the backpack, where there is a hip belt with generous padding and lots of contact. And now you're able to transfer well over half of the weight, usually about 60 to 70% of the weight, to your hips. That can't be accomplished if a backpack has an internal frame that is no higher than the shoulders, because there's no leverage to lift the weight off of the shoulders, because the leverage point is at the same height or lower than shoulders. So essentially, if a backpack has an internal frame that is no higher than the top or the highest point of the shoulder, all it is providing is some rigidity and stability, and that's about it. Now, there might be a small percentage of pressure that can be taken by really wrenching down a hip belt, but
you'd have to sag your shoulder straps.
Right.
Like if you did your hip belt tight and you sagged, like you loosened your shoulder straps, that would allow the hip to take some of that weight. But then you've got these sloppy shoulder strap. The top of the bag is sloppy, not stable.
It's just any amount of instability accentuates fatigue on the body over time. And
you're carrying weight lower than you want now.
The whole point of going, as light as we can is, that the benefits of that will always be there. If you're carrying the crummiest setup possible, but you're really light, you'll be way better off than carrying a crummy setup that's really heavy. So that's the constant, right? But we're basically just not satisfied with any comment of, well, it's just 15 pounds and it's really not that bad. Well, our mentality is we don't want it to just be not that bad. We want it to not be uncomfortable at all after 25 miles in a day. So if we can take some weight off the shoulders, then we're going to take the weight off the shoulders. We're just not satisfied with kind of the thought process that it doesn't really matter, or, I've been doing it for years, or some of that thought process that there's just no reason or benefit to be had. So our internal frame between both of the frame stays weighs 2 ounces, 2.0 ounces. That's like if I were to just take a sip of water, that's 2 ounces. And it's for a ton of comfort and stability that again, I'm just not going to accept or be satisfied with that, it's comfortable enough. Like, I just want to do everything that we can to kind of account for every variable that we can to make the pack more comfortable. And that's kind of the bottom line.
Exactly. The angles that are created by having a tall frame, a frame that is tall enough to exceed the height of your shoulders, that creates the angles that allow everything to go into motion to transfer the weight off of your shoulders. So it's been a while since I've done this, but I'm pretty sure I'm an 18.5-inch torso. So that's measuring from, the top of my hips to a specific vertebrae on your neck area. If I was to buy a backpack with an 18-inch torso, the frame would have to sit exactly on the top of my hips, when in reality your hip belt is typically going to be more dead center or centered on the top of your hips, to even reach the top of my shoulders, which means on an 18-inch frame, there is zero possibility for me to load lift that using the frame. So to me, I would almost argue that there's almost no reason to have a frame if it's only 18 inches, for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not going to go that extreme because it provides stability. That's what it provides, and there's some benefit, but the benefit is like exponential when you actually have a frame that is high enough to lift weight off your shoulders. Another thing I think about to help describe this, I don't know if there's any moms or dads out there or anybody that's ever lifted a kid up and given them a shoulder ride. Like, that's a very common thing. Would you rather lift up a 30-pound kid and just stick them on top of your shoulders, or would you rather lift up a 10-pound kid and put them on your shoulders? What do you think is going to be more comfortable for 25 miles?
Or to take the 30-pound kid and put him on your back like a piggyback ride. Like, I can carry my daughter around that way more comfortably than if she was sitting on my shoulders. I might last a few minutes before I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So to kind of walk back through that again, even with me with an 18.5-inch torso, if I had a 20-inch frame backpack, that still would basically where it should ride, the backpack should ride on my hips. That's going to put the top of the frame level with my shoulders, which still doesn't create any angle to create load lift. So just to recap all of that, having a tall enough frame in correlation to the height of your torso is incredibly important to load transfer that. We've tested that a ton with packs. We've tested that a ton as sportsmen. I mean, by the time I graduated high school, right, I didn't grow up backpacking. I had grown up more of a sportsman with my family and background, and I had carried more like 100-pound packs out of the field than I had backpacked on trails. And that's the kind of experience, and that's continued through life, right? But like that's the kind of experience that really highlights the importance of this and has probably made us hyper-focused and aware of it Because I can't even fathom sometimes when I look around at some of the other packs out there why they would do the things that they do when they have the ability to make a pack actually load transfer and be comfortable and give all these advantages that we hyper focus on, it seems like. But I promise you, when you guys get the pack, and especially after you put in 10 plus miles with the pack, you will see the difference. Even if you are a 10-pound base weight guy or an 8-pound base weight guy, but by the time you add food and water, you've got a 15-pound pack pretty easy. And by the time you do 10 miles, you will absolutely notice this. And this is probably a good time to say this, but we're actually going to be at PCT Trail Days this year.
Yeah.
One of the things that we'll probably do is really bring packs there to help showcase when you put a pack on the correct way and you tighten it up the correct way, just how much more comfortable it is. And again, like Brigham mentioned, for a weight penalty of 2 ounces, which is less than a single snack that's in your hip belt. That's less than a couple swallows of water. It's a nominal amount to be able to stay comfortable, past 15 pounds, which a lot of other packs that aren't really utilizing this, you start to get discomfort past 15 pounds. And again, it comes back to the original purpose of everything, which is this pack should fuel you to be able to do any adventure that you want to, whether you want to go through some of the most remote wilderness areas in the lower 48 in Alaska or anywhere in the world, or you want to do hut-to-hut hiking. This pack should empower you, should keep you present and focused, not uncomfortable or not questioning whether you really want to carry that much food that far, those types of questions. So
yeah, we would just so much rather people have the option. It's not like the lower the weight is, then the less the penalty will be always. But it's so much more rewarding for us to make a pack that enables more opportunity and doesn't restrict by way of not providing adequate comfort or support. And so that's just kind of what we believe in.
Yep. Okay. I think we've covered about everything, Brigham. No?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, no, I think you're right.
We covered.
We're good.
Did we specifically say the weight of this pack yet?
So a medium belt with a medium bag is 27 ounces.
Okay. Pricing wise, I am going to make you go to the website to get this, but this is a pack that we designed with truly no price in mind. Let's build the best possible pack for the most passionate backpackers out there doing the biggest efforts, and just hyper focused on the in-field performance of this pack, which means this pack is going to be quite a bit more money than the Shadow Light. The fabric itself is, I'll just say, exponentially more money. The frame is exponentially more money. They just are. This pack is a sizable investment for us, and we're actually going to take a lower margin on this pack because of that. It's a truly premium pack where we did not hold back in any way, shape, or form, putting the most expensive frame and the most expensive materials and building it in just a absolutely premium, state-of-the-art sewing facility partner of ours that's been a partner for years, producing some of the most expensive high-end gear for other brands in the world. So it's truly a remarkable pack. But again, you will be able to get it at a discount and with that free water bottle accessory during the time of pre-sale. And the sooner that you purchase, the heavier that discount will be. So, don't sit on this if this is a pack that you're interested in. And I think you should be interested in this pack in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Just want to make the point about your comment about using expensive materials. I want everyone to understand that we're not bragging about using expensive materials, and we're not choosing to use expensive materials so that we can say we use expensive materials. We had the objectives that we laid out early on, that we mentioned in the podcast and the previous podcast, And we selected the materials based on what was best to accomplish the objective of the pack. And they're very expensive materials, and that's how it plays out. Is we don't want to sell people a pack with the message being this uses the most expensive fabric in the world. Like, that's not the point. The point is that we use the best materials that we can find that provide the best performance and meet our performance objectives, and that's kind of the way we do things.
Yes, that's 100% accurate. But as you guys being a fan of ours that's listened to the podcast to this point, as you know, we are a direct-to-consumer company. We sell direct. We do not go through wholesale markup channels. You don't see our products in REI or on backcountry.com because we refuse to do so that we don't have to add on extra markups, which even allows us to build this pack at a very competitive price. If we had built this pack and had to go through those channels, there would have been decisions that maybe would have got taken back off the table, such as the carbon fiber frame, because it just would have added too much expense this would have been a $500+ pack pretty easily if it was going through a retail channel. So in all reality, maybe a $600 pack or more. So we still care about keeping the price down, yes, but we're very laser focused on the infield performance. We want people to take this out on 2,000-mile thru hikes and finish the hike just absolutely loving the pack, and with the pack not broken down and in shambles. And I think that's exactly what we've built. So challenge you guys to go look at this product on our website, look up any details. You can drop questions about the product also in the comments on YouTube here if you're watching on YouTube. We are also running, and this will kind of earmark the close per se of the review giveaway. So if you have not yet written a review for the podcast, you can still write a review and be entered in to win a free CS40. Or if you end up buying one on pre-sale because you don't want to wait, which is what I would advise, we'll either refund your money with some store credit or give you the store credit. So don't wait on this to see if you win this pack. Definitely take advantage of that pre-sale pricing, and we'll take care of you. But go write a review for the podcast. It definitely helps us a lot. But I really do challenge you guys to when you get this pack, put it on and just feel the difference of the plushness of the frame and the comfort. And can't wait to hear you guys' feedback on this. Obviously, for Brigham and myself, this is something we've got to work on for a long period of time, and it's always very fun to finally release it into the world and start to hear the feedback and see people take it into the wilderness for themselves. So, really appreciate that, Brigham. Really appreciate all of your work going into this pack. It's come together in such an amazing way, and you continue to just push the needle forward here at Outdoor Vitals with our purpose of designing performance-based gear and performance-focused gear and gear that really will perform for our customers. So, any last thoughts?
No, I'm just really excited. It's been a lot of fun. The places we've gone and tested the pack are phenomenal. It's just a lot of good memories, and I'm really excited for people to get it, take it out in the field, and make good use of it. Yeah, I am as well. So, okay, guys, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you leave us a review. We will give you, from the time that this podcast drops, like on day 1, we'll give you 7 more days to enter into that giveaway. After 7 days, we'll go ahead and call it, and any reviews that come in after that will not be necessarily entered into this giveaway. So go give us a review. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch you guys on a future episode.